You really can't miss the news right now, can you? The simmering tensions between India and Pakistan have definitely boiled over again,
Oh, absolutely.
especially following that really, really disturbing attack on tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir.
Hmm.
And the repercussions, well, they've been swift and significant. We're talking canceled visas, diplomats heading home,
Border crossing closed?
border slams shut,
Yeah,
yeah. Airspace restrictions, even halting a water sharing agreement.
it's serious.
Okay, let's try and unpack this because this isn't just some
The partition of the Indian subcontinent. And as you pointed out, the contested region of Kashmir remains just a central, almost magnetic point of contention.
Kashmir, yes. Always Kashmir, it seems. A region both nations claim, right? And
Yeah.
both currently administer parts of.
That's right. And we shouldn't forget, China also controls the northern slice up there.
Good point. So, for this deep dive, our mission really is to try and understand the layers here, this ongoing conflict. We
Mhm.
want to explore those key historical moments that have, defined this relationship and try to grasp the perspectives involved.
Not just India and Pakistan, but the wider world too.
Exactly. The international community's view. Our aim, really, is to give you a clear, insightful understanding of the situation.
Without getting totally lost in overwhelming detail.
Right. Because it's easy to get lost.
It really is. And it's also easy to overlook the sheer impact of just drawing lines on a map, you
Right
know?
back in 47.
Yeah, the 1947 partition by the British. It wasn't just a political act creating two new nations. It fundamentally reshaped the human and geographical landscape.
In ways we're still grappling with today.
Absolutely.
It carved up the subcontinent, creating India and Pakistan. And, thinking about those territories, it's interesting that difference you mentioned between historical frontiers and modern boundaries.
Oh, definitely. It's a fascinating distinction. Frontiers were more like these transitional geographical zones.
More fluid.
Yeah, fluid areas between settled regions,
Hmm.
maybe defined by natural barriers, maybe overlapping cultures. Boundaries, though,
Yeah.
they're these distinctly political creations.
Lines on a map.
Exactly. Rigid, linear divisions. They precisely mark where one sovereign state ends and another starts. Frontiers are sort of a thing of the past, these broader areas.
Whereas boundaries are very much present-day, politically enforced lines.
Precisely. And tragically, Kashmir finds itself located right on that historical and political fracture line.
So, moving forward chronologically a bit, we had those initial conflicts right after partition, and then jumped to 1971, the Bangladesh Liberation War. Now, this is really significant because, unlike so many other flashpoints, its main focus wasn't actually Kashmir.
That's a critical distinction. The 1971 war, it really stands out precisely because its origins were in that deep political crisis unfolding within Pakistan itself.
Specifically East Pakistan.
In East Pakistan, right, which, as we know, became the independent nation of Bangladesh.
And the key figures then were Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Yes, the charismatic leader in East Pakistan.
Yeah.
And then you had the leadership in West Pakistan, represented by Yahya Khan and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto.
Okay, so what were the core issues? What actually sparked that conflict?
Well, it was a really potent mix. Linguistic issues, political disenfranchisement.
Language.
Yes. Bengali speakers were the majority in Pakistan overall, but Urdu was declared the sole official language back in 1948. That created huge resentment in the East.
I can imagine.
Then came the 1970 general elections. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League won a clear majority across Pakistan.
But they weren't allowed to form a government.
Exactly. They were denied the right. And this blatant disregard for the democratic mandate, it led to widespread civil disobedience across East Pakistan.
And that's when this situation just really spiraled out of control, didn't it?
It did. Pakistan's president, Yahya Khan, responded by ordering the military to forcibly restore order. That's when Operation Searchlight began, March 25th, 1971.
And the goal?
The objective was pretty brutal. Crush the burgeoning Bengali nationalist movement. What followed was a systematic campaign.
By the Pakistan army.
The army and various Islamist militias supporting them.
It's almost impossible to grasp the scale of the human tragedy involved there.
It truly is.
Mm.
There were widespread massacres, systematic sexual violence, a deliberate targeting of nationalist Bengali civilians.
Students, intellectuals.
Students, intellectuals, religious minorities, even Bengali members of the security forces. Dhaka University, for instance, became a site of just horrific atrocity.
The impact.
Devastating. An estimated 10 million Bengali refugees were forced to flee across the border into India.
10 million. That's
It
staggering.
created this immense humanitarian crisis, and an economic one, too, for India's eastern states.
And that massive influx of refugees, that's what ultimately pushed India to intervene directly, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. India was faced with this overwhelming crisis right on its eastern border. So it began to actively support and uh, organize the Bangladeshi resistance forces,
Mukti Bahini.
the Mukti Bahini, yes. Then, after a large-scale preemptive airstrike by Pakistan, full-scale war erupted between India and Pakistan.
And India went in.
India decisively intervened militarily, supporting the Bangladesh liberation movement.
And it all ended with the Pakistani instrument of surrender in Dhaka.
A truly pivotal moment,
Mm-hmm.
the creation of Bangladesh.
Okay, now let's pivot. Let's discuss another dimension here that adds just a profound layer of complexity. Nuclear weapons.
Right, the nuclear dimension.
This chapter, it really kicks off with India's peaceful nuclear explosion back in 1974.
That's right. Now, India maintained this test was solely for peaceful purposes, advancing science and technology.
But Pakistan didn't see it that way.
Not at all. In Pakistan, it was interpreted very differently, as an existential threat to their
Mhm.
security, a development that demanded a response, a strategic countermeasure.
And so Pakistan embarked on its own nuclear program, which wasn't exactly straightforward, was it? There was a lot of international opposition.
Oh, absolutely. Pakistan pursued uranium enrichment, facing considerable international pressure, including a series of U.S. laws aimed at stopping proliferation.
But they managed it.
Despite the challenges, despite diplomatic efforts to dissuade them, yes. Pakistan achieved uranium enrichment in the early 1980s, which was, frankly, a remarkable technical achievement given the hurdles.
And the international climate at the time.
Exactly.
Then we jump forward to 1998, a real watershed year. Both nations openly tested their nuclear capabilities.
Yes. India conducted its Pokhran 2-second tests in May '98, and Pakistan responded with remarkable speed, conducting its Chagai first and seconds later that same month.
Wow, just days apart, wasn't it?
Very quickly. And this overt demonstration of nuclear capability, it just fundamentally reshaped the whole strategic calculation in the region.
And this brings us to that concept of mutual deterrence and the intriguing stability-instability paradox. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The core idea of mutual deterrence is pretty straightforward. When two adversaries both have nuclear weapons, the chance of a big all-out war between them goes down.
Because the consequences are just too horrific.
You know,
Nuclear annihilation.
Right. Mutually assured destruction, essentially. However, the paradox, the stability-instability paradox, suggests that this very stability at the highest level, the nuclear level, might actually increase the risk of lower-level conflicts.
Like conventional war or proxy conflicts.
Exactly. The thinking is that each side might feel a bit bolder engaging in these smaller fights because they believe their nuclear arsenal acts like an umbrella.
Preventing escalation to the nuclear level.
Precisely. It's like we both have the ultimate weapon, so maybe we're safe to have these smaller skirmishes below that threshold.
That's a worrying thought.
It is. And this is where the stated nuclear doctrines of each country become really significant. India, for instance, has declared a no first use policy.
Meaning they won't use nukes unless attacked with nukes first.
Generally, yes. They've pledged to only use nuclear weapons in retaliation for a nuclear attack. But there's a key caveat.
Oh.
They reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in response to a chemical or biological weapons attack against their forces anywhere in the world.
Okay, that's important. And Pakistan?
Pakistan, conversely, maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity. They deliberately don't specify the exact circumstances under which they might resort to nuclear weapons.
What kind of ambiguity?
It's often seen as a deterrent against India's larger conventional military forces, keeping India guessing, essentially.
And in this kind of nuclearized environment, the potential for miscalculation, for misperception, it seems incredibly dangerous.
It is profoundly dangerous. Even a minor misreading of the other side's actions or intentions, it could trigger an unintended escalation with absolutely devastating consequences.
History's full of examples where misperceptions led to war.
It is. And in a nuclear context, the margin for error is, well, it's virtually non-existent.
And we are talking about the potential for just massive casualties, aren't we? I remember reading some studies looking at hypothetical nuclear exchanges.
Yes, particularly during that intense military standoff in 2001-2002. Various research groups modeled potential nuclear conflict scenarios,
Based on the arsenals at the time.
based on the estimated arsenals then, yes. And these studies indicated that even a limited exchange, maybe involving a relatively small number of low-yield weapons,
Could still be catastrophic.
could result in millions of deaths and injuries in
Eh.
both countries. It just underscores the horrific potential.
It's a truly chilling reality. Now, looking beyond those major wars and the ever-present nuclear shadow, the relationship seems marked by this pretty consistent pattern of recurring tensions, smaller conflicts, since 1971, anyway. It feels like a cycle that just keeps repeating.
Unfortunately, that's a very accurate way to describe it. We've seen this long series of skirmishes, incidents, standoffs, continually straining relations.
It's like the 86-87 standoff.
Yes, the military alert in 1986, 1987. It was the largest in South Asia at that point, and it really brought the two countries right to the brink again.
And then the downing of that Pakistani aircraft in 99.
The Atlantic shootdown, yes. That happened immediately after the Kargil War, which further inflamed tensions.
Right, Kargil, 1999. That was a really significant conflict itself. Can you briefly remind us what happened there?
Sure. The Kargil War was kicked off by Pakistani incursions into the Kargil district on the Indian side of the line of control in Kashmir.
Pakistan initially said it wasn't their regular army, right?
They initially claimed it was independent fighters, yes, but it was later confirmed these were regular Pakistan Army personnel. Some think it was maybe retaliation for India capturing parts of the Siachen Glacier earlier.
And these forces took strategic positions.
They occupied strategic high-altitude positions,
Yeah.
giving them a clear line of sight over that crucial highway connecting Srinagar and Leh, a major logistical threat to India.
And India's response was Operation Vijay. That must have been incredibly difficult fighting.
It was indeed. Very intense fighting in tough mountain terrain. India mobilized a substantial number of troops and, after weeks of fighting, managed to regain most of the occupied areas.
There was international pressure, too, wasn't there?
Yes, significant international pressure, particularly from the United States, on Pakistan to withdraw its forces back across the line of control. And they eventually did. There was also a big information and propaganda war going on alongside the fighting.
And the tensions, they certainly didn't just disappear after Kargil. We saw that major standoff in 2001, 2002.
Following the attack on the Indian parliament.
Right. And then the devastating Mumbai attacks in 2008, which led to another period of really high tension. And then just a series of border skirmishes, incidents, 2011, 2013, pretty consistently from 2014 through 2018. It feels like this constant ebb and flow of conflict.
Precisely. And then more recently, we had the February 2019 Pulwama attack, a suicide bombing, killed a large number of Indian paramilitary personnel.
Which led to airstrikes.
Retaliatory airstrikes by India inside Pakistani territory, followed by counterstrikes from Pakistan. Then, August 2019, India revoked Article 370.
Kashmir's special status.
Its special constitutional status, yes. That triggered another major crisis. Pakistan downgraded diplomatic ties, suspended trade.
Even after they agreed to a ceasefire renewal in 2021.
Yes, even after that February 2021 agreement for a strict observance of the ceasefire along the line of control. We now have this very recent tragic attack on tourists in Pahalgam in 2025.
Which brings us right back to where we started with this latest round of diplomatic fallout.
Exactly. The visa cancellations, the border closure.
Yeah. It really paints a picture of a relationship just constantly teetering on a knife's edge. Now, what role has the international community played in all this? It hasn't happened in a vacuum.
Absolutely not. The international community has consistently been involved, especially during these moments of acute crisis.
Like now.
Like now. In the immediate aftermath of this recent attack, the UN Security Council issued a strong press statement, condemned it unequivocally,
Calling terrorism a grave threat.
reiterating that terrorism, in all its forms, is a grave threat to international peace and security, and emphasizing the need to hold perpetrators accountable.
And the U.S. played a key role in that statement.
Yes, the United States, in its role as the pen holder on counterterrorism issues within the Council, was instrumental in drafting that statement.
And there have been calls for a more in-depth investigation into this latest attack, haven't there?
There have. Several Security Council members, including China and Greece, have voiced support for an independent international investigation.
But there's a condition.
Yes, they've emphasized that any such investigation would need the mutual consent, the agreement of both India and Pakistan.
Which might be tricky. What about other major global players? What have their responses been like?
Well, numerous other nations have also called for de-escalation, offered help to facilitate dialogue. The UK, for instance, publicly stated it's ready to support both countries.
And China. as a neighbor to both.
China called the attack regrettable, urged both sides to exercise restraint, and reiterated its firm opposition to all forms of terrorism while emphasizing its position as a neighbor to both.
It seems, historically anyway, that Pakistan has been generally more open to international mediation efforts than India. Is that fair?
That's generally been the pattern, yes. Pakistan has often welcomed international involvement, perhaps seeing as a way to bring global attention to the Kashmir issue, maybe help facilitate a settlement.
Whereas India prefers bilateral talks.
India, on the other hand, has largely preferred to address the issue bilaterally, just between them and Pakistan, maintaining that it's fundamentally an internal affair and resisting what it sees as attempts to internationalize the conflict.
And the U.S. stance has shifted over the years, hasn't it?
It really has. During the 1965 war, the U.S. decided not to provide military aid to Pakistan. But in 1971, their approach was different,
Sending the U.S. enterprise.
offering diplomatic, even some indirect military support, famously deploying the U.S.'s enterprise to the Bay of Bengal. Yet, fast forward to the Kargil War in '99.
A very different stance.
A very different posture, yes. Strongly urging Pakistan to withdraw its forces. And throughout much of this, China has been a pretty consistent diplomatic ally and supporter of Pakistan.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just so clear that this is a deeply rooted, incredibly complex challenge. What would you say are the core factors that just keep this conflict going?
It really boils down to several interconnected, powerful forces, I think. First, you absolutely have the historical roots, stemming from that 1947 partition, leaving Kashmir unresolved, a persistent source of friction.
Just baked in from the start.
Baked in, yes. Then there's the tragic, recurring cycle of violence. Attacks, retaliations, continuously fueling mistrust, animosity.
It's hard to break that cycle.
Very hard. Then, of course, the introduction of nuclear weapons into this dynamic. That just dramatically elevated the stakes, creating this ever-present danger of escalation, even from seemingly minor incidents. And finally, you've got that intricate web of international relations. Various global powers with their own distinct interests, their own perspectives. It adds another significant layer of complexity to the whole thing.
And as we've seen with this latest attack, tensions are, once again, at a very precarious level. The potential for more escalation in a region with two nuclear-armed neighbors so close. It's an incredibly serious concern.
For the entire world, really.
It is indeed. Which brings us, I suppose, to a crucial question for you, the listener, to consider. Given this long, often violent history and these current international calls for restraint, what realistic pathways might actually exist towards lasting peace, towards genuine stability in this critical region?
And what meaningful role can external actors, the international community, truly play in facilitating that incredibly difficult but absolutely essential process? It's a challenge that, well, it defies easy solutions. But it's one that definitely demands our continued attention and critical thought.